Good afternoon. We're going to give it a couple more minutes. Then we'll go ahead and maybe get started. Waiting to see if some other people show up. Thank you. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. How are you guys doing this afternoon?
I'm good, thank you.
And Brianne, you on?
Yep.
There we go. All right. Well, obviously, I'm filling in for Jamie. Jamie's at a conference today. So we're just going to go ahead and kind of go forward. We've waited to see if some more people come in. If they do, obviously, they'll be able to be involved in the process. If not, then we'll also have this recording to send out to folks as well. So the reason why we kind of created the Lunch and Learns is to try to kind of educate people on kind of what we offer here at the board and kind of what our role is. So I'm just going to cut right to the chase and get right down to it. I'm going to go ahead, and I know we've got an agenda set up here, and I think Monica was going to start first. So Monica, if you want to take it away and talk about the issues that are important to you, and then we'll turn it over to Bree, and then I'll finish up with the guardianship. I know one of the ONI representatives was supposed to come on as well to speak about guardianship and what we offer through ONI, which is Ohio Network for Innovation. So we'll finish with that. So Monica, go ahead.
Okay, so I am Monica. I'm Monica Bettinger. I actually am a family advocate here at the Zanesville-Muskingum County Health Department. My role looks probably a little weird to some. I work with uh, the agencies, the mental health and recovery agencies locally. I also recently have taken on some tobacco work. We're trying to work in prevention in that area. So what is important to me is family recovery. I believe that recovery starts at the foundation, which is at the family. Um, so uh, we do have a family support group that soon after I started here, we got back up and running. I always say that I am the product of a very strong family support group that was started by Muskingum Behavioral Health probably about 10 years ago. And then COVID happened and it kind of went to the wayside. But when I started here, that was one of my first goals was to get that up and running again. It has been going for about a year now. One of the changes that we did make was I wanted to make sure that all of the local behavioral health and mental health facilities were involved in that. So we do have a rotating schedule. Every other week, we have a different facilitator, which is all of the local. There's 9 agencies that are involved. I think that it's important for the families to know about Matt, about the mental health aspect, whether or not their loved one is there or not, to know ahead of time, maybe before it happens. I learned the hard way. I was very closed-minded about Matt, and then it hit me in the face with my youngest child. who then said to me, "You need to educate yourself." And I said, "I am educated." He said, "But you're not." So I had to become educated about that after the fact. So um, I always tell parents to open your mind, educate yourself, even if you think that's not the pathway that your loved one is going to take today. To educate yourself, because it could be a part of their journey down the road. And mental health, I believe that we're seeing more, especially with methamphetamine being so popular, we're seeing more mental health uh, being very existent with a lot of the diagnoses. So I try to make sure that I focus on with my families to make sure to love right where they're at, and that looks different for everybody. Um, I never say that there's a wrong way either. To me, there's no wrong way. Everybody's way is different. So I wish that more behavioral health facilities would utilize our family group. I think that I know there's a lot that needs done in the process of recovery, that sometimes it often gets overlooked. I don't believe that we can send well people back to sick homes, and that's what we do a lot of. So um, I'm very passionate about it, and I'm always available for families. If a mom needs somebody to talk to, I listen. Um, I'm there for an ear. So I do have two children that struggle, and my oldest son actually is in treatment right now. So it's been a journey, and I've learned along the way, and I continue to learn. So that is me in a nutshell, maybe. If anybody has any questions, I'm willing to answer.
I do have a question. So obviously you're living in that world. You have a personal relationship with that. Um, when he said that to you, obviously your first response was to be kind of defensive in a way and say, I am an educated person. I know, what I'm talking about, but you really didn't, because you didn't see it from that perspective. So you kind of give us some ideas on some of those examples of things that you thought you knew, but you really didn't know. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I believed at that time that Matt was basically subbing one for another. I had an experience with my older son that was exactly what happened. And that was my only belief, because I wasn't educated. That was our first try at recovery for my oldest son, was Suboxone, and it was when they first come to town, and that was an easy fix. That was when I was very educated about the disease mechanism too. So I tell this story a lot. I literally Googled, because I was ashamed at the time, how to fix addiction without anybody knowing. And the first thing that come up was Suboxone. So I threw money at it and thought that would fix it. So my youngest son, he said to me, "You need to stay in your lane." And I'm like, "But I am in my lane, because this is what I know everything about." And he's very different. My two boys are completely different in their journeys and their pathways. My youngest son has never went to a meeting, and I don't know that he ever plans to go to a meeting, but he is on Sublocade today, and is very successful with it. And my oldest son has never done Matt until I believe he is about to get Vivitrol soon, very soon. And he has never, in our 10 years, has never had a Matt. So, and I believe, I may be speaking out of turn, but I believe that he has had that same belief that I've had, that why do I need that? That's subbing. But so it was a complete lack of education. Now my belief is that it can be a tool for somebody. I always say, what's next? I believe that it can be a part of a journey, but it shouldn't be a destination for somebody in their recovery.
And I also think that's really important that you brought that up, because I think we all think that the one size fits all kind of mentality, and we're individuals, and everyone's individuals, everyone's different. And I appreciate the fact that you're saying what works for one of my sons doesn't work for the other. So I,
No. Yeah. It's been a great learning experience. I remember when the week that I found out about my youngest son, it was a kratom ordeal that went south. I didn't know that you could actually become so addicted to kratom that then you turn to the streets, but it was that way with my youngest son. My oldest son actually had failed a drug screen for felony probation and was going to prison. And this all happened in the matter of a week. And I literally thought I was losing my mind because, I remember falling to my knees and saying, God, why did you give me two broken children? Like, what are you doing to me? And everybody's like, well, they only give the strongest people the hardest battles. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I only have two children and now they're both broken. But I realize that this journey is really it's been such a learning experience, and I've grown tremendously through both of their journeys. So I don't regret or take any of it back. I mean, I'm not ashamed, and I speak very loudly about all of it. So with their permission.
does anybody else have any questions for Monica before we move on? Well, I appreciate it, and thank you, Monica, for sharing kind of what you do and kind of your passion, and also your personal journey with that, because I think that really speaks more to people, your personal experiences than anything else. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next we'll turn it over to Bree.
Hello, my name is Brianne. I am the new Nami-6 County Director. I just took over back in September. So there's a lot of things that we are hoping to do right now, just kind of rebuilding the program back up and hoping to get family to family and peer to peer groups in the surrounding 6 county areas. Right now, we only have one in Coshocton and one in Muskingum, but I am looking to build more of those family to family, youth to youth, and peer to peer programs in the surrounding 6 counties, as well as building board. I am currently looking for board members to rebuild the board. So there's a lot of things that I have as far as ideas as what I'd like to see and what I'd like to do for Nami-6 County. But right now we're kind of like in the beginning stages of kind of rebuilding and kind of revamping what it was before. Doing a lot of reaching out to a lot of the surrounding 6 counties, trying to meet with some of the surrounding recovery facilities and behavioral facilities to try to meet them and see what their needs are and what would benefit them in their county. So, don't have a whole lot to kind of discuss right now as to what we offer, because what we want to offer and what we kind of offer right now are two different things at the moment, but working on that goal. So currently we have a peer-to-peer in Coshocton and in Muskingum, but I'm looking to do family to family and trying to find some youth to go through the NAMI youth to youth programs and trainings there, which I think would be neat to have in the school systems, is to have the youth to youth program in the school systems. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will give you a little backstory. Actually, Monica is the one who introduced me to NAMI last year. And so I took her advice and went through the NAMI 6 County, or the NAMI family peer support training. So back in June, I went through the NAMI training and was a certified family peer support specialist through the state of Ohio. And I reached out to Monica and about NAMI because my daughter was struggling with mental health issues. She got suicidal and twice had attempted suicide. And so that kind of took me on my own journey of dealing with a teenage daughter with mental health issues. And like Monica, you haven't made up in your mind that this is how it's going to look, and it never looks anything like you picture. The struggle is real, and realizing that you have to give yourself grace and you have to give your child grace is very hard sometimes, because as a mom, you're like, what did I miss? How did I miss all of those red flags? And then you have to realize that they're more than just their mental health issue. They're more than just their anxiety diagnosis. They're more than just their suicidal diagnosis. And so we did a lot of counseling, a lot of searching. I had to do a lot of soul searching myself because you think, oh, I'll never have to be that one that deals with the mental health issue or the addiction issue. And the reality is the most quote normal family can deal with the hardest mental health issues, or in Monica's case, the hardest addiction issues. And it's never easy. And you do feel shame. You're like, how do I keep this to my family under my roof and not let anybody else know? But the reality is that's why there's such a stigma, because we don't let anybody else know what the issues are going and so on inside. So that's kind of how I found NAMI and why I'm so passionate about getting families and individuals the help that they need and the resources that they need to navigate this mental health system. And I like how Monica is looking for, other behavioral places to find family support groups, because the reality is a lot of times addiction and mental health, they go hand in hand in more ways than we realize. One of the issues with my daughter was she was attempting to take a dozen Tylenol at a given time because she needed to feel something, or she needed to drown away what she felt. So they go hand in hand a lot. So my goal is to reach out to these local agencies to try to build a rapport and build support with them. And I'll put my email in the link here too for anybody who wants to reach out to me.
Thank you, Brianne. I appreciate it. And again, providing that personal touch that affects all of us. It's kind of funny that you say that. Just from my personal experience, I have 4 boys. I have 2 currently in college and 2 in high school right now. And my second born, he had some significant, we didn't realize at the time in school, because his older brother was a star athlete, was homecoming king, and everyone liked him. He went through school, had no issues. And then here comes Blake, my second born, and he didn't have the same experience. He was an athlete, he did track and everything, but didn't have the same experience, and had some issues with some bullying problems with some of the kids at school. He's only 3 years behind my oldest, and you just don't see that coming. It was kind of shocking that they're kind of the same person, come from the same family. And Zach was very outspoken and aggressive, hey, this is who I am, and take me or leave me. And Blake was not like that. He's very sensitive and took that in, and it really affected his mental health. And we really went through some battles with Blake on that and got him some help that he needed. And now the nice thing about that is owning that and not making that stigmatized is that he's owned it. And now he's helping, and he's in other support groups, and he's now going to college, and he's in those kind of groups too, helping with mental health and trying to get that out. So there was a blessing to that. But again, we went through some hard times with that as well. So you just don't see it coming. You don't think it's going to affect your kids until it does. And then it really does kind of rock your world, so to speak. So I do appreciate both of you being very open and candid about that, because it's a very difficult subject to talk about, especially as a parent. And I fully get that. And there was some conversations with my son about suicide as well. And it really, nothing hits you harder as a parent until you hear that. It just almost brings you to your knees. And it makes me a little emotional right now just talking about it, because it just was so painful to hear that they were so unhappy. But then to see them get to the other side also is also a blessing as well. So I appreciate you, sharing that with us and giving us that information. Does anybody else have any questions or any insight for Brianne?
I do want to say though, if anybody is interested in being a family to family or a peer to peer program leader, I guess I should say, through NAMI, reach out to me, because I'm trying to currently find people who are willing to go through those trainings to lead the family to family and a peer to peer through NAMI. So if you know anybody who might be interested, send them my way. And I will also say that NAMI has started doing youth to youth training. It's fairly new. It's where young adults or teens, I think ages 16 through 25, can go through these trainings, and then they can in return work with like the local NAMI or NAMI Ohio to help raise awareness for youth. So my daughter is actually going to go through those trainings because she wants to now help people like her who are struggling to go through those trainings. So it's something fairly new that NAMI's doing, but it's really cool because they're also going to start working in the school systems and in the colleges as well. So if you know anybody interested, reach out to me.
That's excellent, because I know someone who probably would be interested. Just talked about it. My son, he's going to college now too, and is really passionate about educating people on mental health and illness, especially with that age group. It's that 16 to 25 really is an important age group. So thank you for that, and I think we'll be in touch with you going forward. Anybody else have anything else to add before we move on to guardianship? The one thing I do want to address, Monica, I'm going to put you back on the spot real quick. You did forward a community, family, and friends support and education group flyer. Can you talk about that a little bit? And then I will make sure that people get that sent out after the meeting.
Yeah, so that is the weekly. It's every Wednesday at 6:30 here at the Zanesville Muskingum County Health Department. It's the support group that I talked about, that we rotate facilitators with our local mental health and recovery agencies. Couldn't think of the word. So it's for whether it be substance or we do touch base on mental health too. All Well participates, but I think they are currently our only mental health provider that comes in. Right now, we're actually working the 12 steps with the families through Families Anonymous. So it's something a little different, but we do meet weekly. It usually runs about an hour. Sometimes it's an hour and a half. It just depends on who's here and how much they like to talk. But it's a free group, obviously. I said I feel like it's very underutilized. I know back when we were at Eastside with NBH, there were times that there would be 30 to 40 people in that room. And we just can't seem to get past 15 here. So it's a great group. If you can we can get the people here. So trying to do a little bit more advertising, get people to know that it's here.
That's excellent. I'll go ahead and make sure everyone that's on this meeting, I'll send that out to you guys after the meeting, and then obviously provide that information to anybody I come in contact with as well, Monica, to get that information out. Thank you. All right, moving on, we'll discuss guardianship. So I was going to have Josh Young. He is the director of ONI, Ohio Network for Innovation. We have partnered with ONI to provide mental health guardianships in our 6-county region. ONI, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background until hopefully he comes on. He was supposed to be on here at 12:30, so if not, I will get through it. But I've worked with them. So when I first came to the mental health board. I used to work in the DD system, developmental disabilities, and was really big with APSE. And APSE is an agency, a statewide organization that provides guardianship for people with disabilities that don't have family that can assist in that area. So kind of what ONI is doing is they're mirroring kind of what APSE is doing through the developmental disabilities and bringing that to the mental health side. So currently, they're trying to build guardianship slots, is what they call them, and they do it per year per person. And they're currently working. I know they have some guardianships services in Athens County, Tuscarawas, Carroll County. I know in our 6-county region, Licking County. So they're kind of growing. There's some, I think, in the Canton Akron area as well. So they're slowly growing, and really what their service is they're responsible to be the court appointed guardian for people with mental health issues that do not have family members that can or is able to provide those services for them through probate court. So ONI has created a system where they can charge per person, per slot, per year to help provide that guardianship services. And it's just strictly the guardianship side. They do offer payeeships as well, but they typically focus on the guardianship part of it. That's kind of really what their main focus is. And so what we've done is we've met with them, and because of the need that we've seen in our region, we were able to provide funding to support 42 slots per year for people with guardianship services. Currently, we have 38 slots filled with individuals that currently need a mental health guardian. And we currently have 4 applications. I'm receiving another one today to go through. So we will probably be at capacity within a couple of weeks, full at 42. So it's really a needed service. It's something that I think eventually could be something where it's a model like what APSE does statewide. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now, building that. Obviously, ONI is in the stages of growing. So they are currently trying to continue to provide and bring on people that have that passion to be a guardian and a representative for these individuals. So they're still in that growing phase. So it's a little difficult for them to expand very quickly. They got to do it in stages. But they are currently looking at that. Eventually, Josh and I have talked about taking this to OMOS and taking a couple of years of data that we'll be able to create here and showing the need just here in the 6-county region, and maybe even partnering with Licking County and showing the state, this is something that developmental disability, DODD, has done, throughout the state, and they've supported that and subsidized that, and they get line item funding. Maybe it's something that we can do through the mental health sphere. So that's kind of something that we're also looking at doing down the road once ONI's become a little bit more stable in their growth. I've also recently met with all 6 adult protective services agencies, JFSs, and also Licking County as well. And they have currently brought on, Josh is coming on now, let him talk a little bit more in depth about ONI. But they've pretty much come on board, and they're going to cover some adult protective slots. And I think they've secured 35 or 40 slots as well in our particular region. So the more services we can grow and provide in our region and partner with our other agencies, I think the stronger we'll be. So Josh, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
There you are. How you doing,
Looking through
Josh?
some things. Good. How are you?
Not too bad. So I'm kind of giving the participants here of this meeting kind of an overview very quickly of kind of what ONI is. You obviously get a little bit more in depth and explain it, but then I also kind of described our partnership and how we started and how you're trying to do this as a model across the board. So if you can kind of go ahead and take over and elaborate, we'll go from there.
Sure thing. Give me a second here.
Sure.
All right. You all can see the slide, but not my notes on the other side. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about ONI's services. We are a small nonprofit that has grown exponentially, really, since we started. So we started in 2018. First thing we did was youth respite through a grant, but our whole goal is just to find creative solutions to community needs. And so we expanded into housing, a bunch of other stuff. So right now, this is what our service map looks like. So we have a presence in all of those counties across the state in one form or another, and that can be decision-making supports. So that includes the guardianship services that we offer, but we also do a lot of training, education, creating, sharing resources related to supported decision-making, which is just acknowledging, respecting that, guardianship is sometimes needed for people. Other times, there are less restrictive alternatives that we can pursue and use to support people with decision making. So we do that whole continuum of decision making supports. We have financial supports. We provide payee services for people with Social Security benefits, veterans, railroad, for those with disabilities who might have stable accounts. We can help them manage that. And if necessary, we can help people manage their wages as well. We do have a nurse. She does mostly just delegation and some training. We have a nurse on staff. She helps with our decision-making supports and guardianship as well. And then we have housing and employment. So we're a housing corporation. Right now, we work primarily or exclusively with county boards of DD. But as I said, we're always looking for creative opportunities. So, we know there are housing needs outside of the disability system. If we want to get around the table and talk about what that need is and how we might be able to help, we are always open to that. So our guardianship services, the reason that we did it is that we were hearing from a lot of people in places that guardians were hard to find, or that there were long waiting lists, or even when a guardian was appointed, they were overwhelmed with their caseload or the work they were doing, which meant they couldn't respond in a timely manner or even get to know the person, which is really critical, of course, to be able to make decisions on their behalf. So we wanted to come up with something probably like Carl was alluding to, that's just a little bit different, respects person-centered approach, and offers partners opportunities that weren't out there. So this is our service map for guardianship right now. And that's probably more guardianship and decision-making, so supported decision-making. There are some counties that just want supported decision-making training or education and not as much of the guardianship. But we're in all of those counties. In terms of guardianship, we now have an 8-member team. So there's me, the director of operations. There is Maggie, who is the nurse, but she's our project coordinator. We have Vicki Stevens, some of you will know or have heard of, and she is the team lead for the guardianship team. So she supervises directly the other guardians that we have under her. There are 212 spots right now reserved. So that means that partners have said, we think we're going to need this many guardianships. So they reserve those spots. 146 of those are active, but we get referrals all the time that we respond to. And we have a 24/7 on call. So if it is after regular business hours, people are still going to need consent for things, especially emergency consent. So someone is always on that line. And if during the day you can't get a hold of one of our reps, but you really need consent, you can call on call and someone will answer and be able to provide that consent or guidance. These are just some of our partners: Adult Protective Services, nursing homes, hospitals, mental health boards, county boards of DD. We work directly with probate courts as well. So there is no limit on who we can partner with. It's kind of what our referral process looks like. It's a few pages. And when we get a referral from a partner, these are our self-imposed timelines. So this is what we strive to meet. If we get a referral for an emergency guardianship, and we'll talk more about that in a second, we try to turn those around in 1 or 2 days. The thought being, if this is an emergency, something needs to happen pretty quickly, we get the referral from you all. As long as it has all the information we need, we can then get it to our attorney, get it to the court. For non-emergencies, we strive to process those referrals and get the applications to the court in 5 to 7 business days. Now, there are lots of factors that can affect this, but this is what we strive for. For you all, Ben Whitaker is the attorney that we are probably going to use most if you need an attorney. And you guys might have a relationship already with him or a contract already with him, but we work with Ben for a lot of other counties in that region and organizations in that region. So he's the face that you'll probably see representing Oni if you end up at a court hearing and Oni's there. So this is really important for the referral process. The referrals need to come from the primary partner. So what does that mean? It means you all are our primary partner. We can get referrals from you, directly from you. You submit the referral via email, we get it, we process it. But of course, you all interface with other entities and organizations in the community. And occasionally, and not just for your region, but all over the state, occasionally one of those other entities will think, well, we'll just submit the referral straight to Oni. And that won't work for any of us because you all are paying for the service. So you need to know what's coming to us that we're processing and providing a service for. So if that happens, just remind these other entities that they actually need to submit information or go through you all. And then if you all are okay with it, you can submit the referral to us to process. Before I go on, are there any questions about that stuff? Okay. Let's go a little bit deeper. What kinds of guardianship services do we provide? Well, there are lots of different kinds of guardianship. A lot of times people think of guardianship as just one thing, but there are different kinds. So guardian of person is the one that most people think about. That means that we are appointed guardian to make basic decisions like medical treatment, placement, housing, things like that. Occasionally, where a person works, or if we have to implement some sort of behavioral intervention, then we can give consent for those things. So guardian of person is what most people think about. But there's also guardian of estate. So we provide guardian of estate as well, which means we are appointed guardian to manage the person's funds, their assets. If they have retirement, if they have a house, if they have a car, then we have the authority and responsibility to manage that stuff. What that typically looks like is that someone is moving into a nursing home and we have to manage and liquidate those assets so that they can qualify for Medicaid. So we can provide both. Emergency guardianship happens when there's something that's going to be really bad in the next 72 hours. And if we don't get a guardian in place, someone's going to get hurt or just something bad's going to happen. So in that case, you can submit a referral to us. Again, we'll try to process that within a day or two. It does require an extra form for emergency guardianships. It's just justifying the emergency. So a doctor has to complete that extra form and say, this is why there's an emergency and why we need to act now. In an emergency guardianship, they last for an initial 3 days, or that 72 hours. And then we typically have to go to court to ask for them to extend it for another 30 days. So altogether, in most cases, an emergency guardianship can last for 33 days. If we do nothing else during that time, again, in most cases, that emergency guardianship is going to expire. And then there will be no guardian after that. Sometimes that's all that's necessary. It's rare, but sometimes all we need is somebody to step in an emergency and give consent for something. Other times, we've been presented with an emergency or crisis, but that need is going to be ongoing. And if that's the case, then during that emergency period, we also need to submit an additional application for guardian of person and or estate. That's sort of indefinite. Limited guardianship. So probably not something that we use as much as we should. Limited guardianship means that we can become guardian, but only have authority over specific decisions or a limited set or scope of decision making. So someone might need a guardian to make medical decisions for them about their treatment, their medication, things like that. But they may have the capacity to make other decisions in their life. If that's the case, we're going to advocate for limited guardianship. We don't need to remove all of their civil rights unless it's absolutely necessary, and sometimes it is. But if they can retain some rights to make some decisions in their life, then we're going to advocate for that. And in restoration, There are sometimes when a person has a guardian or has had a guardian for a very long time, and they may not need that guardian any longer. Again, more rare, but it does happen. Or they've had a guardian and they've developed some decision-making skills, so they don't need a full guardian anymore. We could try to limit that guardianship and restore some of their rights. So all of these things are things that we offer through our program. All right. Why do we kind of do things differently? Again, guardianship is the legal removal of a person's rights. And so it's a pretty big deal. It's often the best way to support people who don't have capacity. But before we end up there, we just want to make sure that guardianship is the right thing to do. So we are always going to ask, what are we trying to accomplish with this guardianship? And many times we'll find that, yep, guardianship is the best way to do that. But sometimes we'll find that there is a less restrictive alternative or way to support that person. Maybe it's a power of attorney, advanced directives, a payee. There are lots of other options that we're aware of and have used that we can suggest first. And then if those don't work, yeah, maybe we end up at guardianship. But we're always going to ask, what are we trying to accomplish first? Because we found that across the state and really across the country, there are some misconceptions about what guardians can and can't do. There are limitations on our scope of authority. So we can give consent for a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can force people to do something that they don't want to do. Now, in a state hospital setting, it's a little bit different. But if somebody just doesn't take their medications regularly, so they need a guardian, all I'm going to do is say, hey, man, you really need to take your medications regularly. I'm giving consent for that. But when they say F off, I'm not going to do that, there's not a whole lot I can do as guardian unless we're escalating this to they need to be in a state hospital of some kind, right? So they don't go to their medical appointments. Okay, I'll give consent for them to go to their medical appointments. But when they say no, are we going to like restrain them and throw them in a car and drive them to the appointment? So just be aware that there are some limitations on what a guardian can and can't do. Guardianship is really intended for people who don't have the capacity to make decisions. Even if they get help to think through them, they still don't have the capacity to do that. So we tend to think of decision-making capacity like this. A person either has decision-making capacity or they do not. It's either all or nothing. Sometimes we do this with other things in the field like high or low functioning, right? And we all do it, but there's probably better language we can use that doesn't limit us to one category or the other. Because if I'm high functioning, but I really struggle with things, where's the room for me to need help? If I'm low functioning, but I'm also really good at some things and don't use much help, where's the acknowledgement that I can be more independent, right? So we're just saying that things are a little more nuanced than that. Same thing with decision-making capacity. It really depends on the kind of decision that a person is making, the resources and knowledge they have available to them, including other people that they can ask for help. So instead of that, we like to think of decision-making capacity like this. Yes, there are going to be decisions in all of our lives, whether we are served by the mental health board or the disability system or any other system, where we're pretty good. We're knowledgeable, we're experienced, we know how to think through those decisions. We might ask for advice here and there, but otherwise we got it. There are also going to be decisions in all of our lives where we feel a little less equipped, a little less confident to make them on our own, and we may need a little bit more support. It doesn't always mean we don't have the capacity to make those decisions. Sometimes it just means we need additional help. If the decision that I need to make in my life is about what dog to get next, I grew up in a family that owned and loved dogs. I'm good. I might ask my aunt about the shelter down the street. Is it legit? But that's about all I need. But if the decision that I need to make is about my finances or retirement or investing funds, I need a very different kind of support with that. I need somebody to break it down in simple terms. I would prefer they use visuals, graphics, probably gonna have to tell me several times and let me think about it before I really understand it. Does that mean I don't have the capacity to make that decision? Not necessarily. Let's start by giving me the right kind of support to see if I can make the decision. But why does any of that matter? Because the Ohio State Supreme Court has said a couple of really important things that I think most people, organizations, and even guardians are not aware of. So this is straight from their guidance. The Ohio State Supreme Court says that a person who is incompetent, and that's still the language they use, that they generally still have the capacity to make non-life-threatening daily decisions. So even if someone has a guardian, they can and should be making some of their own decisions. And that a person who does have a guardian has the right to participate in decision-making that affects their lives and have their needs, their wants, their preferences considered when that decision is being made. So really the role of the guardian is to assist that person or the ward with decision-making. Now, there are times where we're going to have to step in and say, nope, that is not going to work for you or anybody else. In fact, we're going to have to give consent for something else, or we're going to have to disagree. But before we end up there, we want to try to work with the person. So we're supposed to advocate for services that focus on that person's needs and are in their best interest. We're supposed to consult with them to make decisions in their best interest based on what we think that person would want. Not based on what we want for the person, but what would that person want if they were able to make the decision? And that's the decision we're supposed to make, as long as it's not going to result in harm to them or someone else. So when we're looking at best interest, it just means, and this is clear as mud, what would a reasonable person do in this situation? We could probably ask 10 reasonable people and get 10 different responses in any situation, but that's the best the court has to give us, right? So when we're thinking about making a decision in this person's best interest, what would a reasonable person do? I'll tell you, to be perfectly honest, we're probably thinking, yes, what does this person want first? Does it make sense? And second or third, what is the judge in that particular county going to say? If we go in front of that judge and they ask why we made a decision, we need to be able to justify it. And I'd love to tell you that all judges process things the same way or interpret things the same way. That is not true. Every judge runs their court a little bit differently. So they may interpret decisions differently. All right. When we are figuring out what's in this person's best interest, we are actually supposed to figure out if they have a preference first. So if I'm working with John, guardian for John, and we're talking about where to live, the first thing I'm supposed to do, after I get all the information necessary, is talk to John about what he wants. And if John says he wants to live in placement A, then I'm supposed to advocate for that unless placement A is going to result in harm or unless it contradicts some existing court order. There may be other members of the team that really think he should go to placement B. But if John's preference is A, then my job as a guardian is to determine whether or not there's significant harm that's going to come from that. And if so, disagree and make a different decision. But if not, advocate for him to go to placement A. Now, if this is somebody who just has not really in their whole life been able to make decisions for one reason or another, disability probably, then we're supposed to ask the people around them, what do you know about this person? What has been important to them? How have they grown up? What's their culture like? What are their traditions, their expectations? The more that we understand that, the better we can make a decision based on what we think they would want for themselves. So that's kind of a tall task sometimes, but that's what we try to do. So we're supposed to act in the best interest whenever feasible, except when it might cause harm. So when we get a referral and we're processing it, the first thing we're going to do is ask ourselves, do we think there are any less restrictive alternatives available to guardianship? If so, let's at least talk about them. If we've done that, if we've tried some of those and we still feel like, yep, guardianship's the way, then we need, in addition to that referral, an expert evaluation from a doctor. The form a doctor fills out says, yep, I think this person needs a guardian, basically. They ask lots of questions, but that's what they're looking for at the end is, do I think this person needs a guardian? Once we have that and all the information that we request in the referral, then we're going to complete an application and get it to the court. A court is going to send out a court investigator to serve that person, say, hey, somebody applied for guardian review, but also sort of assess the situation. And they can come back and say, you know what, John really does not want this person, his aunt, to be his guardian. They do not get along. He doesn't like her. So judge, you need to be aware of that. Or I talked to John. He seems really with it. He gets it. I don't know if he needs a guardian. Maybe you want to ask some more questions at the hearing, judge. Or, yep, met with John. This application makes complete sense. Probably needs a guardian, right? So between the expert evaluation that the doctor completes and the court investigator's report, the judge is going to consider all that, likely hold a hearing, and ask for some testimony. At the hearing, we're going to be present. If the judge requires it, then the attorney is going to be present. The person for whom we're applying for guardianship, they also have the right to be at every hearing. We don't see it happen very often, but we advocate for it. This is the removal of their rights, so they should be able to be at that hearing. They can ask for counsel at that hearing if they want, and then that hearing is going to be continued, and we're going to come back another day. But they have the right to be at that hearing. Now, in an emergency guardianship, it's ex parte. They just do it. But if it's a regular, indefinite guardianship, non-emergency, then we're going to have that hearing. At that hearing, the judge is going to take that testimony and make a final judgment, and that's where the guardian either is or is not appointed. We get a piece of paper with a legal stamp or seal on it that says you're officially the guardian, and from that point on, we are supposed to act as guardian for that person. We have the legal authority to do so. However, the court, the judge, is always a superior guardian. We are serving at their discretion. So if a judge disagrees with a decision or a string of decisions that we have made, doesn't really understand the logic behind it, they can call us in, they can question us about it, they can cite us, they can and have threatened us with jail time sometimes. So it's kind of a big deal, right? We're serving at their discretion. And if they don't like the way that we're acting as guardian, they can remove us as guardian and appoint somebody else. So the judge always has the final authority. If we're in the middle of a situation or a decision which is kind of complicated, we're not really sure what the right decision is, we can always bring that before the judge and ask them to make that decision. I would typically encourage teams to work it out before we end up going to the judge. Again, because every judge interprets things differently, and you're not going to get 2 weeks of conversations with the judge to make that decision. You're going to get 15 minutes, a half hour, maybe an hour in front of that judge to distill everything that goes into this important decision down into something that's digestible for that person, for that judge, for them to make a decision. And we are inevitably going to miss things, right? You're not going to get all the nuances or everybody's perspective. So before we go before a judge to ask them to make a decision, we try to really work it out as a team. There is guardianship training. All of our reps take it. There's a 6-hour initial course and then a 3-hour continuing education course. So we're finishing that up actually this year for our next year. If you have any questions about guardianship, what it is not, what the responsibilities really entail, and you have an extra 6 hours, I would encourage you to take that training. You don't have to do it all in one sitting, but it will answer a lot of your questions. It's really dry, but it's really good information. So even if it's not ONI, if you're working with somebody and maybe a family member is considering guardianship, I would encourage them before they file an application to take that training so that they know what they're getting into. Because some of them will say, oh, that's not at all what I thought it was. I don't think this is what I want anymore. Right? From my perspective, it's a little bit unfortunate that many judges waive this requirement for the training for family members. And family members are some of the people that I think could benefit the most from this kind of training. But some judges waive it for family members because they feel like, well, they know the person. And I agree, they probably do know the person best, but I don't know that they really understand what guardianship is when they apply. All right, and finally, we've got guardianship and we've got supported decision-making, which is really just asking for help to make decisions. And we all do it. And sometimes those can be seen as mutually exclusive. Either the person has a guardian or we're going to use supported decision-making and look for those less restrictive alternatives for them. In reality, this is how it should be practiced. You've got guardianship and you've got opportunities throughout that guardianship to look for ways to use supported decision making. So there may be a decision for somebody on my caseload. I'll give you a real example without using a name. I'm supporting a guy who wants to move out of his current group home and move back to his home county. And in that case, I have asked him what he thinks might happen, in each situation. If you stay at the group home, if you move back to your home county, we've talked through it. He's expressed his preference. He wants to be closer to family. He wants to be around people that he knows. However, in this case, I had to give consent for him to stay at the group home several counties away because he has burned all of his bridges in his home county. He doesn't have any resources left. Nobody will work with him. He's really good at finding drugs down in his home county. He's got a protective order against him from somebody in his home county. So we try to find opportunities to ask them what they want, talk through the risks and the benefits of those decisions. And if it's not going to result in harm, then I'm going to advocate for them to have that opportunity to do that thing. But if it's going to result in harm, then my responsibility as guardian is to step in and say, no, actually, this is what's in your best interest right now. So we're always going to approach decisions this way. That's all I got for now. Carl, is there anything else you want me to talk about or address? Or are there any questions?
No, I think you covered it, Josh. I greatly appreciate your time and a great presentation. Thank you. And again, anybody that's on this meeting currently, and obviously we'll see this going forward. If you have any questions, please reach out to Josh or even myself, and we will make sure you get those questions answered. But once again, Josh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for Josh before we end the session?
Yeah.
I have a question. So have you ever dealt with anybody solely that struggles with substance use disorder?
Yeah.
Have you?
Frequently.
Okay. Well, I've had parents, that have asked, maybe their child has struggled with alcoholism, since they were a teenager. I actually just had one recently that the son wouldn't go into treatment for nothing. And they wanted to Baker Act them and do all this stuff. And sometimes I think they're just too sick to know that they need treatment. And sometimes you do have to give them that original push. But we visited the probate court here and asked them, and they were not familiar with any type of nothing. So we couldn't go anywhere with that. But so I wasn't sure if there's, anything for those families that ask.
In terms of like treatment for their loved one?
Well, the gentleman, he obviously needs, in my opinion, he needs some guardianship for a while. He's a hot train wreck, obviously, because he's an alcoholic, and unfortunately lives with a mom who is elderly. So there's a couple different dynamics here, but so if maybe a sister could step in and help guide him maybe into treatment for a while, I don't know. A lot of people say if they don't want it, they don't want it, but sometimes I believe that they're too sick to know that they want it until they get to a point.
Yeah, I think that's a question of capacity, right? Do they really understand the options before them? Do they really understand the risks and the benefits of their decisions and the potential outcomes of their decisions? And if they don't, then there's probably an opportunity to talk about guardianship there. With that said, as the guardian, I can say you need to go to treatment.
Yeah.
And they can disappear and decline to go to treatment. And sometimes we do, unless we're going to get back around the table and talk about forcing that person into treatment, then my role as guardian is kind of limited. Now, we have made decisions where that person has to go to treatment, right? And sometimes that is successful. And sometimes they get into treatment, they stabilize, and so they get released. And then we just go back through the cycle over and over and over again. So I wish I had a great answer, especially for those who are struggling with substance abuse. And we have quite a few of them that we work with. I think in those cases, we have guardianship and the authority of the guardianship and the backing of the court. And we also have supported decision-making, which is in some cases, like, I want to be careful because we have to have really good boundaries here, but in some cases, sort of mentorship, So how do we help this person understand their decisions? How do we help them think through them and develop better decision-making skills around this? And, like your case managers, that's a lot of what case managers sometimes end up doing too.
Yeah.
So there can be some overlap between there. You've got sort of a figure in your life now that is looking out for you, making decisions with you in your best interest. And sometimes that influence can be enough to get the person to make different or better decisions moving forward.
Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. Any other questions before we close out? I just want to introduce, she needs to come up. This is our intern for the mental health board. This is Avery. I'm going to have Avery kind of introduce herself real quick before we head out.
Like you said, my name's Avery. I go to John Glenn High School. I'm a senior this year, so I'm picking out colleges and everything. So I'm excited to see what I get to do in my future and everything that I'll get into.
Excellent. So just wanted to introduce Avery here. Obviously, hopefully she's looking at the behavioral health, mental health field. So that'll be exciting since we know that we need the staffing, just like Josh tells me all the time, we need staffing in the guardianship area. It's like everywhere you go, we need more staff. We need more staff. So we're just trying to get people more exposed, more high school students exposed to the mental health and behavioral health field. So again, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your time. And you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.